has a 10-second delay.
We've kind of done that as you drive through Montgomery, Minnesota, I think.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, but I'm seeing that we're live, and it seems like there's an opportunity to go ahead and start our watch parties, which I haven't really offered the lunatics an opportunity to earn any prizes through a watch party starting.
What?
Not lately.
Well, what the hell's been going on over there?
Yeah. Oh, I see. You were nonplussed because you wondered why I haven't been able to do it recently. But my question is why did the lunatics need incentive to start your watch parties?
Oh, because you were giving away free shit. That's the way this country works now.
Yeah. Should we just hand out compliments? Do you think that's enough incentive?
I don't know. As we'll learn today, those might be considered racist.
That is true. Well, I'm going to try to do something crazy and start the show while also cross-posting on a handful of pages that we didn't get that through. Do you think that's too aggressive, or what do you think? Should we start the show?
There's no such thing as too aggressive, Lou.
Oh, well, we'll put that to the test in a few minutes. I realized as I was sharing the screen and trying to cross post to more pages that we were really looking under the hood for some of the lunatics. But welcome to Hot Lou Happy Hour. I'm your host, Lou Abramowski, or somewhat discombobulatedly known as Hot Lou.
It's going to be the best show ever because I'm 11 things at once, Mike Franklin.
As am I. This is probably going to be a relatively quick show here as we try to manage a handful of things. But we mostly wanted to come in and talk about a new Mayor of Wokedale, which, I know I made the push earlier to try to rebrand it as Mayor of Wokeville. But now I find myself unable to switch, and every time I do it, I call it Mayor of Wokedale.
Yeah, I thought this might happen. Once you got a brand, buddy, just let it go. Let it go. Keep it happening.
We've talked about it actually on the podcast, the Hot Lou Show. On the brand becomes the name becomes the brand, not the other way around. You can name it whatever you want. So I should have just realized that at the beginning.
Oh well.
Sometimes we're not even taking our own advice, but as I do this, I also realized I've never cross-posted to a bunch of the other pages in the middle of this, as loyal lunatic Brandon Mattis recommends that we change it to the Mayor of Wokedalesville.
All I know is this is woke Ghazi right now. Everything
it is.
Today's tangle sort of. I wish we had Isaac back on the show. Sort of mealy mouth. Whether there's a cancel culture happening right now, which I find fascinating that somebody can't just say, "Yep, it's happening." We'll get there.
Yeah, that is absolute truth. You're right. I tried to get some of the details, and I tried to look for the actual person that we could award the Mayor of Wokedale to. But it seems like this might be the first Mayor of Wokedale via collective, right?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be the last. It's one of the things this cancel culture crowd has in common is that they're very timid about letting us know who they are sometimes.
Yeah. So I think maybe as I was scrambling to start the show, you looked into a couple of the details of the story. Were you able to track some of them down?
Yeah, a little bit. The thing is, now, others, please chime in here if you find more, because if this is what it appears to be, this is not only terrifying, this is just, well, it's not even terrifying anymore. Now it's just par for the course in the United States of America. In San Francisco, that bastion of white supremacism, And now the latest update is I saw this story yesterday, but the latest update is this person now has resigned from his job. This is the museum curator for the San Francisco, easy for me to say, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Modern art.
This is why it's going to be a quick show today.
San Francisco Museum of, you can read it, damn it. Gary Garrels. And he was subject to a petition demanding his resignation, which the mob has received. They've gotten his resignation. The accusation, and as far as I can tell, the only accusation named in this urge to purge the curator from the museum was at the end of a meeting. I'm trying to pull up the Newsweek article here. At the end of an all-staff meeting, the white senior curator was giving a presentation. Now, this is an effort to bring in new art by people of color. This is in that context. And he made the statement by saying, don't worry, we will definitely still continue to collect white artists. And so that statement, and as far as I can find, is the only statement that is, it's cited in this Reason article. And Garrels has apparently articulated this sentiment on more than one occasion. He said it would be impossible to completely shun white artists because this would constitute reverse discrimination, which seems what I would just call it discrimination, but okay. That's the sum total of his alleged crimes. He made a perfectly benign, wholly inoffensive, obviously true statement that at least some of the museum's featured artists would continue to be white. The petition lists no other specific grievances. And as of, I believe earlier today, he has resigned. So the cancel culture that some of us want to deny is alive and well in that we ought to just rename San Francisco Wokeville or Wokedale or Woke Gazi or whatever. But it's, there it is.
Yeah, I've got a couple things to say about this, but I have to point out an astute observation now. The second one already in the show from Loyal Lunatic Brandon Mattis, that I think our friend here, Gary Garrels, was destined to be canceled with a name like Garrels. I mean, it's really on the parents on this one. Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for that, Brandon. But the other point that I want to make is, his whole comment that they're not going to stop collecting art from white men, is so close to actually being incredibly woke. Which is so funny because I think we've approached this period now where the line between wokeness and being sexist or racist or bigoted is becoming finer and finer to the point where we're probably going to be about one atom thick. Because, I mean, I think you could very easily interpret it, what he's saying as, we will never not collect art from any type of person.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know what his intent was. I don't want to read into it, but on the, we used to live in a world where sort of the objectively, with context, but the statement that you made was the statement we judged you on, and I find no problems with the statement he made. I mean, he doesn't say we will certainly, he doesn't say we'll only rather collect art whites, or
that's the point I'm making here is I think the statement he's making could easily be interpreted, and in fact, in some ways, I think only be interpreted as him saying, we're not going to exclude any sort of group. And that to me would be as woke a statement as you could presumably make.
Lou, that's the equivalent of saying all lives matter. I'm genuinely serious.
Yeah, no, you're right.
What people would say is that if we don't exclude certain people, then we by definition are excluding certain people because of the power dynamic that exists because of white supremacy. And here's this: I just saw this. So I didn't have much time. This is what I was kind of obsessed with when the show started. This tweet is going around, and I want to look into this because this could be a nomination for a future, and by future I mean tomorrow, Mayor of Wokedale, Richard Carranza, who is apparently the school's chancellor in New York City. This is a presentation slide showing that administrators are being taught to avoid the hallmarks of quote unquote white supremacy culture. and they're drawn from a book that's about 20 years old, as near as I can tell. Some of the white supremacy culture: perfectionism, sense of urgency, defensiveness, quantity over quality, worship of the written word, only one right way, paternalism, either or thinking, power hoarding, fear of open conflict, individualism, progress is bigger or more, objectivity, and right to comfort. And in this slide, which I'll send to you so you have it for the show notes, there's certainly examples in here that I'm sure you could call out as being a sign or a signal that somebody is thinking in a white supremacist way. But if this is what's being taught, if this is what is people for example, at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, see, I said it, are being taught to look for in terms of white supremacy, I got news for you. You're going to find this everywhere you look. You're going to find objectivity.
Well, as you know what, as you were reading that, I genuinely, because I couldn't read the fine print, I didn't know if that was describing white supremacist culture or woke culture. like all but like one or two of those is pretty clearly, I think, falls in the camp of the woke culture, right? Like the either or thinking is like straight up cancer culture, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. The point is that either or thinking. Let's look at this in the idea that it's I believe this is supposed to be for people who work in the New York City school system, or at least I can tell this is teachers are supposed to be looking for paternalism. Paternalism here is defined as when those already in power think they're the only ones who can or should make decisions.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that have to do with statues being torn down?
Well, this is what happens when somebody of color is in power. For example, if I had a boss who was a black woman and she told me that I was going to do X, Y, and Z, and so if I challenge her, that's a paternalistic attitude towards how we should do this. We should be collaborating here. Nope, you're my boss. I do what you tell me to do. Otherwise, I find a new job. Now, I realize that a teacher can virtually never lose their job, but here is
well, that's kind of either or thinking, wouldn't you say?
I suppose. Well, by this definition, I'm absolutely well, I won't say I'm a white supremacist, but I've certainly been inculcated in white supremacy culture. I often function with a sense of urgency. I get a little defensive when people criticize what I'm doing. I do think that progress often means bigger or more. That, you know, it doesn't always, that's not exclusive, but it is one example of progress. I do try to practice objectivity. I fail, as I believe everyone who's a human being does, but I strive toward it as a value. Yeah.
Well, this really explains the last 31 years of our relationship, where I tried to bully you for the first couple of months, and then you immediately changed the power dynamic, and I've basically been subjugated by you ever since.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I mean,
you're appropriating my culture just with your background here. You've got hot mic number 3 sitting here.
I'm sorry you had to find this out on a live podcast.
I'm embarrassed that it took me this long to wake up, but now
I sent this to you. You can post it if you wish. This is these are the hallmarks of white supremacist cultures, which is to say culture.
Yeah.
Certainly culture in any kind of an employment setting, you will find these items. And that is, maybe that's what they're really offering. Maybe that's what they're really saying, is that at the end of the day, the entire culture that we operate in is, I mean, I'm hearing people say this, is built on white supremacy, which if true, you know, you're not going to like the result. You're not going to like where we go after we concede that.
Yeah. Would you say that the road to fascism is paved in wokeness?
I will not make that statement on a live internet show, but what I will say is that no one woke up, very few people woke up one day and just, there I go using the word woke again. Very few people woke up intending to become fascists, but they nonetheless existed.
Yeah, I need to work on my little catchphrase here about the road to fascism being paved in wokeness. I know there's a far more clever or pithy way to say that, or maybe less derivative, but you know, we'll workshop it.
These are scary times, is my point, and my advice to myself as a lunatic, but to other lunatics, is don't stand for this. This is not none of these little micro examples of this affect you personally, unless you happen to be an employee at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, which I guess I can't rule out. But for the most part, any of these examples we're providing are not affecting you personally, but taken together, this is not a culture you want. At least I hope not. And if you do, I'd love to have you on the show. I'd love for you to explain to me the utopia you are trying to create by virtue of firing Gary Garrels for the temerity of finding value in art that was produced by white people.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm very proud that we got to issue the first mayor of Wokedalesville to a collective body of people who got somebody to resign.
There is very important.
It is, yeah, because we didn't get to issue it. In this particular case, Gary Garrels, who is the worst named art curator in America, I think, he wasn't fired. He did resign. So we didn't get to issue it to one individual. But congratulations to some of the residents of San Francisco. It was inevitable that you were going to earn it.
That's right. I suppose it was inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, I love San Francisco, don't get me wrong, but there's also some challenges with that city and its wokeness and or its tenderloin neighborhoods. So the only other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up was, we're continuing to see this trend towards tons and tons of positive cases and in coronavirus, yet not seeing the spikes in hospitalizations or deaths. And I'm curious
data on that. I mean, I know there are some cases, some states where there are spiking deaths, although nothing like we saw in New York, specifically in New York City at the original outbreak. But I do think there's some data out there that's worth watching. As far as I believe California led the country yesterday in deaths, but it was like 147, which is not insignificant, obviously, but during the peak back in New York City, I mean, I think that number was 8 to 10 times as much in certain days. I mean, it was.
It was well into the 4 digits. Yeah. Well, we have, and we know that hospitalizations and deaths are a lagging figure. So, but we're in this weird time where and I can't remember if we talked about it on the show or I had a different separate private conversation, but science by its very nature is always incomplete. So we're always waiting for more data to make more informed decisions. But you and I talked on this show and with, I think, a guest or two about how much we were going to learn roughly 4 weeks after all of the protests happened. And yet, for some strange reason, we're not seeing spikes in this, not the gigantic, huge spikes we were expected to see, with the 2 to 3 week period after these big, massive protests in the cities where we saw them. And we're not seeing that. Instead,
we're seeing spikes in cases. We're not seeing spikes in hospitalizations or deaths. I mean, just to be, now these protests were coming up on 2 months ago.
Yeah, but right. But we would have what we were expecting to see, I think, if we were to believe that the, infection rate, in these large groups like this would kind of go crazy considering the, virality of the coronavirus. We're expecting even case numbers to spike way above what we saw. Because, just on the 35W bridge, while that tanker was going after it, we saw, 5 to 10,000 people packed tightly and only a handful of them wearing masks. And not exactly social distancing. There was some of it, but granted that was outside too. So the spiking that we've seen is maybe kind of more bar oriented or, close quarters oriented.
Sure. And I'm willing to concede that. I think if we go back, I'd have to get the fact checkers on this, but I'm fairly sure I would have been of the mindset back then that we're probably not going to see a spike from the protesters because there's a lot of activities that I really don't believe we're going to see a spike in and haven't really seen a spike in. And this, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but
Yeah.
very
Well, I mean, we're going to address it because there's going to be what I started saying before I went off on my tangent is that it kind of feels like we're always talking about, we're going to know a lot more in like 2 or 3 weeks.
we never
And I
do.
think and that's the case that we're in right now is that, we're seeing this spiking numbers, but, if, the expectation is that we're going to see a huge spike now because the spike in cases happening today in 2 to 3 weeks that we're going to see huge spikes in hospitalizations and deaths. And we're not really sure because we see the age going way down in terms of the cases that are there, but who knows?
The treatments have improved dramatically over the past few months, both in terms of drug treatments and other kinds of treatments. The infection, what's it called? The infection mortality rate has dramatically dropped. And so, and obviously testing, I heard a statistic today. We are testing more people per week for coronavirus than we tested for the flu in like the last 3 years.
Yeah. We heard that from the same source.
Oh, did we? Well,
we did.
It's remarkable if that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it seems true. I mean, we're approaching something, I think we're well into the digits in tests per day right now, which is pretty incredible. So, and this was some of the things that we were trying to do. We were trying to delay this so that we could test it, because one of the neat things that happened to me over the weekend is I went into a pizza restaurant that sold pizza by the slice, and they asked if we were staying there to write down our name and phone number so that in case one of the employees or an individual tested positive, that they could do contact tracing later on.
Yeah, that's required in Minnesota. If you
it is. Okay, because I've been in other restaurants where that did not happen, and maybe it's because it was outdoor seating only or only takeout. But
if I know that the rules are that you're supposed to have a reservation, and you can make the reservation in real time, and that's what they're doing. They're collecting your name and contact information for contact tracing.
Oh, that's amazing. So obviously that's scary for anybody that's like concerned about privacy. But on the other hand, the sacrifice that you make in that is that maybe, in a couple of months, if this stuff is working really smoothly, we could look more like a Japan. Of course, we have to give up a bunch of privacy rights and other freedoms in order to do it. But time's going to tell here. Well, I know that we have to wrap up very early, unusually early here on hotlou Happy Hour today, but we're going to try to get a conversation in about schooling either tomorrow or the next day.
I'd love to have someone who's actually, like I said, I think we should put the team on this, the development team, to get. I'd love to have a pro-con debate. I really would, because for the life of me, I cannot understand the people who are advocating for an online only option. And then I
particularly with the numbers that we're seeing right now, right? We're seeing a lowering despite skyrocketing cases, and we're not seeing the deaths skyrocket just yet. And by the way, one other thing that I want to mention is that the vaccine trial that started back in March is now potentially going to be tested with 30,000 people starting on July 27th.
I know. Wouldn't that be amazing? And it sounds like the very, very initial trial was overwhelmingly positive. So then deploying it at scale would be the game changer that we're looking for here. Hopefully, that whatever. I mean, maybe it won't work, and maybe there's a false hope there, but
yeah. And you know what? We're going to end the show by handing loyal lunatic Brandon Mattis yet another amazing contribution here by saying that the people that want your name and phone number will get it anyways.
Well, I was going to say to those folks and to Brandon, if you're concerned about privacy when you're eating in a restaurant, gosh, I hope you're paying cash.
That's an excellent point. All right. Well, you have to go. I have to go. So there's a bite-sized hotlou Happy Hour for today. But we're going to try to make the school conversation happen with or without experts very soon, because it's obviously starting to become an urgent matter. So With that, thanks everybody for tuning into Hotlou Happy Hour. Like all the things, comment all the time. You know, every time you like, share, start a watch party, it's helping us out a ton, trying to figure out exactly who's loving the show. As Chief Fact Checker Josh Kimber checks in for the last 30 seconds here. But thanks everybody for tuning into today's Hotlou Happy Hour. I am your host, Hotlou.
I am not COVID infected, Mike Franklin.